Jamie, and I am here at the end of March, and that means wrap-up video, and since I didn't do a wrap-up video for February, I'm going to tag along February and March in this video, so I'm going to go pretty quickly. I'm not going to just give descriptions for any of the books, so I will hopefully remember to put down below links to Goodreads descriptions for all of the books, so if you want to know more about what the book is about, you can go check that out. And with that, I'm going to get started because I have a heck of a whole lot of books to talk about. So the first books that I'm going to just mention are the books that were on my TBR for February and March that I didn't get to. The first book being The Game by Terry Schott. This was a TBR jar pick, so it's going to go back into the jar to be chosen again in a different month. So that was the first book. The next book was also a TBR jar pick, and that was The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. It is the first book in the Lord of the Rings series, and as The Game, it's also going to go back in the TBR jar to be chosen again. The next book that I did not start was The City of Ember by Janie DuPrau, and it sounded really interesting, and so it's going to go on my shelf to read again sometime, probably this year, because I really do want to read it. Yeah, so we'll see when it shows up in a TBR. Okay, so the next book that is on the list that I did not start was Remembered by Tamera Alexander. This is the third book in the Fountain Creek Chronicles, and I read the first two the past couple months, and this is going to be on my TBR for April, so stay tuned for a full description of what this book is about. Okay, and then the last book that I did not start in the month of February or March, this was a March book, and that is the fourth book in the Harry Potter series, and that is The Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling, and I'm rereading the series this year, and I just didn't get to this book this month, and I will have this on my TBR for April. Okay, so those are the books that I didn't even start. Then I have a couple books that I did start, but I have not finished yet, and the first book was A Lost Lady by Willa Cather. This is a book my husband chose for me, and I got into it, probably about 30 pages, was not engaged in it, and so maybe one day I'll pick this up again and finish it, but probably not in the near future. And then the next book, the reason why I haven't finished this book is because I lost it, which makes me so stinking sad because I just bought it, and it was Donna Miller's new book, Scary Close, and I was like halfway through it, and I misplaced it, and I can't find it. Hopefully I will find it, and when I do, I will finish it. Okay, and then the last book that I have started but have not finished is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Mistborn trilogy. I am about 315 pages, I am 315 pages into it, and I will finish this. This will probably be the first book I finish in April. So that finishes the books that I did not start or started but did not finish. Now, on to the books that I did finish. So the first book I'm going to talk about is a book that my husband and I have been reading together while we're in the car, and that is Divergent by Veronica Roth. This is the second time for me to read this. This is the first time for my husband, and I have to say that I didn't like it as much the second time. It didn't compel me along in the story as it did on the first time reading it through, and I found myself even more annoyed by some of the things that happened in the book that I found annoyed the first time, but it just drove me nuts. Things that I'm like, this did not have to happen this way. It didn't. If it would have happened differently, it would not have changed the plot, and it just made more drama that was unnecessary. So I would still recommend the Divergent series, but for me it's not really that rereadable, so I probably won't be reading it again anytime soon. So that is the first book. The second book, I'll continue on my note because it's in my hand, is Fools Rush In by Thompson, and this is a, and this is a Christian fiction book that I got for free on my Nook, and it is the first book in a series. It was full of witty characters and funny events and good conversation and a plot that really drove the story along. There were just a couple of stereotypes that really just kind of bothered me in the sense that it felt very unimaginative, like the Italian family that is one of the main driving points of the story they're Italian, and so they love food, and they're loud, and they're in each other's business, and they live in the same house. And then you have another family that is Texan, and so they are always wearing cowboy boots and wearing cowboy hats, and they live on a farm and ride horses, and they love country music. So it wasn't something that hindered me from enjoying the story. If it would have been a little bit more imaginative, it would have been even better. So that was Fool's Russian by Janice Thompson. Okay, the next book, the one that's on the top of the pile, is Revealed by Tamera Alexander, and this is the second book in the Fountain Creek Chronicles, and it follows Annabelle Grayson and Matthew Taylor, who you meet in the first book of the Fountain Creek Chronicles, and I just love this story. It's just an amazing story of redemption and of, laying down your pride and laying down everything that you encountered in your past and moving forward, and it's just an amazing story and one of my favorites of Tamera Alexander. Highly recommend any of her books if you love Christian fiction or looking for Christian fiction that has just a little bit more depth. Tamera Alexander really brings depth to her stories. And then the next book, the one next on top, is Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. This is the second book in the Lunar Chronicles, and this is a retelling of the Little Red Riding Hood, and it follows Scarlet, who portrays Little Red Riding Hood, and Wolf, who you can imagine who he portrays. And I love this story, and I love Cinder and Scarlet, just how she takes the basic fairy tale story and just twists it in a way that is just makes it completely different than the original story, and it was just great. I have to say I like this one even more than Cinder, and I'm looking forward to continuing the series with Cress, and it was so good, so good. I flew through this book in like 2 days. It was so good. Okay, so that was Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. The next book on my list is Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson, and this book is an amazing story. It follows Emily and her best friend, Sloane, who sends her this list of things for Emily to do, and it's just the story of Emily just coming into her own and making new friends and being a little brave and doing things a little wild and a little outside of who she is, and it is just a great story of friendship and first love and being a teenager in summer and just what that really entails, and it was fantastic, and I definitely see myself reading this again maybe this year in the summer. Highly recommend it if you're looking for a good contemporary story. This is awesome. The next book, it's another Morgan Matson book, and that is Amy and Roger's epic Detour, and I absolutely loved the story. It follows Amy and Roger, who are taking a road trip from California to Connecticut, and Amy, who is dealing with the death of her father, and Roger, who's dealing with a girlfriend and all this other baggage, and just their experience of driving across the United States and learning about friendship and about themselves. It was a great story. The only problem was the ending. It just didn't bring a lot of resolution, but I still recommend it. It's still a great story. That is Amy and Roger's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson. And then the next book, we're almost done, guys. The next book is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. It is the third book in the Harry Potter series, and I absolutely love this story. It is my favorite in the entire series, mainly because I feel like it's the only story where Harry and Ron and Hermione, they just experience being kids. Like, they experience breaking rules and getting into mischief and fighting with each other and going to class and learning, and this one I just feel is just a good adolescent story, and I absolutely love it. Okay, so that is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And the last book that I read in February/March was the first book in the Mistborn series, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, and I picked this book up solely because a few of my favorite booktubers were hosting this event called the Year of Cosmere. Every month we're reading a different Brandon Sanderson book, and Mistborn was the first book, and I truly enjoyed it. It was a great story. Definitely different than anything I ever have read, and I highly recommend this book for anyone that loves fantasy, loves sci-fi, loves adventure. I'm really enjoying this series, and I love Brandon Sanderson's writing. He is a phenomenal writer. He does great world building and great character development and interesting things that his characters are dealing with in a way that hasn't really been done before. So guys, that was my mega long books that I read. So let me know down below if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them. If you want more of my opinions on any of the books that I read, let me know and I can do a longer video describing why I really loved some books or why I had some problems with some of them. And if you have any recommendations for books that you have read and you think that I should read, I love getting recommendations, so please let me know down below. And as always, guys, I hope you're having a great month and happy reading, and I will see you on the flip side. Bye!
And if you're wondering, yes, this is a mega